Never thought fame would be this bad. Stalker dressed in cosplay kidnapped my wife and son. Now my wife is dead and my son is missing. I never imagined that being famous would be such a drag. I know saying that probably makes me come off as some arrogant jerk, but that's not my intention. I'm just being real about it. Fame can be overwhelming. Ever since I landed those blockbuster roles back to back, my days have been a whirlwind of phone calls and meetings. Sometimes I just crave a few moments of peace and quiet. Initially, I thought the best part would be having a fan base. The idea that millions of people knew who I was and watched me perform was both intimidating and exhilarating. Meeting a fan always brightened my day. I aimed to make it the highlight of theirs too. But that bliss was short-lived. Interacting with fans gradually became more uncomfortable. There are social media pages dedicated to tracking my every move, groups that follow my car, speculate on my future projects. There's even a page for fan fiction about the characters I've played. Honestly, it's all a bit creepy. I understand it's part of the package, and none of them were threatening me at least, until I met Ashley. It was about a month ago. I stopped by a little coffee shop just outside Brookfield on my way to a convention. It was the third one I'd attended, and the biggest one yet, with over 5,000 attendees. We had a booth set up to promote a new streaming series where I had a major role. I liked my co-stars, and was excited to meet fans and answer their questions, but I desperately needed a caffeine boost, so I ordered a large coffee. A few people recognized me and politely asked for photos and autographs. They were nice about it, so I obliged. Polite fans are a rarity. As I was heading out, I noticed her in the parking lot. She was in full cosplay, not unusual given the proximity to the convention center. What caught my eye was her character choice. She was dressed as Andrew Marsh from the Stalker series, one of my characters. I always got a kick out of seeing fans dressed as my characters. It was a great feeling knowing I did a good job. She spotted me as soon as I saw her, and she looked like she was about to faint. I gave her a wave and kept walking to my rideshare, but she was already making a beeline for me. I didn't want to be rude and speed off, but I also didn't want to be late, so I decided to greet her and then suggest she visit our booth to chat. "Hi," she exclaimed. I smiled. She was clearly thrilled to see me. "Hey there, you're Adam Forson. I'm such a huge fan." "Yep, that's me. Thanks for being a fan. It's always great to meet people." "I have so many questions to ask you. Oh my God, do you have a minute?" "Unfortunately, I'm in a bit of a hurry. I think we're both headed to the same convention, and I can't be late. If you stop by the Dream Killer booth, I'll make sure you get to the front of the line and answer all your questions, okay?" Her face fell slightly, but she kept smiling and nodded eagerly. "I'll see you there." I waved goodbye as I got into the car. She seemed nice, I thought. I intended to keep my promise, though part of me hoped she wouldn't hold me to it too strictly. I just hoped her questions would be brief, so the line could keep moving. She showed up just 15 minutes after we set up the booth. I have no idea how she managed to get there so quickly, considering the massive line outside the convention center, but at the time, I didn't give it much thought. True to my word, I let her skip the line, signing her notebook and answering all her questions. The initial questions were innocent enough. Stuff about the dog I posted on social media, my wife and newborn son, upcoming projects I was interested in. Her questions were so detailed, I briefly wondered if she was some kind of undercover reporter with a hidden camera. That suspicion faded, though, when her questions started getting oddly personal. First, she asked what hotel I was staying at, and like an idiot, I told her the truth. Then she wanted to know what floor I was on. That's when I got suspicious and started lying. "Oh, I'm on the 15th floor, I think." I just kind of dropped my wife and kid off there and left without really noticing. "Well, actually, you're on the 7th floor." She was right. But how did she know that? Sure, I hadn't been at the hotel long, but had people really seen me and reported my location that quickly? My confusion turned to fear, and then to anger. I wanted to stay composed in public, so I had my co-star take over and excused myself under the pretense of going to the restroom. I went straight to the management office and requested she be removed from the convention, explaining what had happened. I provided her badge number when asked, but it wasn't in the system. Maybe she snuck in without paying, which would explain how she got there so fast. When I returned to the booth, security hadn't arrived yet, and she was still waiting there eagerly. My patience was wearing thin. I don't like being mean to people, but when they put my family at risk, that's a different story. I sighed as I approached and sat back down. Yay, you're back! Anyways, I heard your wife is a nurse. Why would you marry someone in such a stuck-up profession instead of someone who actually cares about what you do? I couldn't believe my ears. She said it so smoothly and quickly that I glanced up, half expecting her to be reading from a script. She wasn't. She was just looking at me, her smile gone, her expression flat. My co-stars turned their heads slightly at her comment. I think they were just as baffled as I was, but they weren't nearly as angry. I had reached my limit, but I needed to find out who she was before kicking her out. I needed a name or something to figure out if she was a stalker or just socially clueless. I'm not sure, I guess. Love works in funny ways. What's your name again? She extended her hand for a shake. My name is Ashley Parker. Well, that's the name I use on social media. I made a mental note of her name, planning to look it up later. For now, I was done. With her and with the booth, at least for a few hours. Right. Well, Ashley, your questions were extremely inappropriate. Frankly, I think you need a hobby outside of the entertainment world. Please leave the booth. I didn't wait to see her reaction, but I could almost hear her blushing in the silence that followed. Everyone in the booth went quiet, except for a few whispers. I walked towards one of the break rooms, texting my co-stars to let them know I'd be back once she was gone. I'm lucky to work with such great people. They were very understanding. While I was sitting in the break room, I decided to Google her name. Sure enough, I found a social media account linked to it. She appeared to be a nerdy streamer, primarily focusing on TV shows and movies, specifically the ones I was involved in. The account didn't have many followers and was created just a few months after my first movie came out. In her bio, there was a PDF with links to all her socials. It was the usual stuff. Her sponsors, streaming channels, and some niche platforms. Right in the middle was a link to a forum dedicated to Ice Stalker, which I didn't even know existed. The website looked like it had been hastily thrown together. A basic interface with a black screen, a bunch of hyperlinks, and a chat box. The chat was active, but it wasn't discussing the show. Instead, it was filled with messages about my whereabouts and those of my co-workers. Among the sea of disturbing posts, one user stood out. It had to be her. The username was literally a Parker Forson, combining her name with mine. What the hell, I thought. Every message she posted was vile. Most of it was her role-playing with someone else, her as herself, and the other person as me. It started with sexual fantasies, and then got darker. They role-played scenarios where she would break into my house, tie me up, and gut his wife like a fish. That was just the beginning. It got worse, to the point where I was scrolling through the messages, taking deep, exasperated breaths. This person was clearly unhinged, and I couldn't stay at the convention any longer. I ran back to the booth to inform the other actors about what I'd found. After all, who knew if there was some twisted roleplay about them hidden elsewhere on the site? To their credit, they took it very seriously. We spent the afternoon shooing fans away and packing up the booth. We had to cancel for our own safety. While they finished packing, I went to the security office to inquire about what had happened to Ashley after I left. Apparently, she saw them coming and took off in a hurry. When I asked if they had any other information on her, they just shook their heads. It wasn't their fault, but it wasn't the news I was hoping for. I hailed a cab outside the convention center, declining a ride from my manager. He and the rest of the crew were heading into the city for pizza, but I had lost my appetite after the day's events. Thankfully, the cabbie didn't recognize me. I was done with fans for the month. It was a long ride back to the hotel, about an hour and 10 minutes. I don't know why my manager booked us so far away, but he said it was the best he could find last minute, so I didn't complain. After about 20 minutes, I felt something was wrong. That little tingle in my gut told me to check the website again. My common sense said to leave it alone for the day, but 10 minutes later, the feeling was too strong to ignore. I opened the homepage on my phone, and the chat box had about 24 new messages, all from a Parker Forson. They were in all caps and got increasingly deranged. It started with her saying how embarrassed she felt after being rejected, then spiraled into thinly veiled threats. I'm gonna freaking lose it. He better watch his family. He seems to care more about them than his fans. The last message, sent 2 minutes ago, was the only one not in caps. Members, check the sightings page. The page she mentioned was in the sidebar. I hadn't explored the site beyond the chat box, but I clicked the link. There were dozens of pictures. My phone lagged near the bottom of the page, so there were probably hundreds. All candid shots, sorted by the most recent date. All of me. Me visiting family just across state lines. Me outside my house. More recently, me in the hotel hallway with my wife and kid. My vision grew spotty and my heart raced. All of them were uploaded by a Parker Forson. The latest photo, posted 2 minutes ago, showed me at a red light, taken through a windshield, likely from a car in front of us. I immediately asked the driver to wait outside the hotel while I grabbed my family and our belongings. I offered him several $1,000s, so it wasn't like I was wasting his time. I planned to have him drop us at the local police station, where we could report the site and hopefully get this person tracked down and arrested. I hadn't called my wife up to that point. Stupid, I know, but I didn't want her to worry. She was already stressed and sleep-deprived. I called her over and over again, but she didn't pick up. We were only 2 minutes away, but I couldn't wait anymore. I offered the driver more money to run every red light, and I think he only agreed because there was no one else on the road at that hour. I tore through the lobby like a man possessed. Someone might have recognized me, and I'd probably end up on some gossip site, but I couldn't care less. I smashed the elevator button for the 7th floor repeatedly, as if that would make it move faster. Every second in that elevator felt like an eternity. When the doors finally opened, I sprinted down the hall, my heart pounding like it was about to burst. Fumbling with my wallet, I eventually found the keycard and held it to the lock. The door clicked open. The room was pitch dark. I called out my wife's name, assuming she'd be asleep. It was around 11 p.m., her usual bedtime with our son. I flicked on the lamp and froze. Our luggage was strewn all over the room. Clothes were scattered everywhere, every zipper open. My wife and son were gone. I checked the closet, hoping they were hiding. I checked the bathroom, praying they were in there. Nothing. Instead, I found a message written in red on the mirror. Not words, just numbers. I stood there, trying to process everything. I stared at myself in the mirror, then noticed the shower curtain was slightly ajar. Someone was behind it, watching me. I didn't have time to react. I wish I did. I would have taken her down. Instead, she leaped out and bolted for the door. I recognized the cosplay immediately. I tried to chase her, but she was too quick, too agile. I drove straight to the police station and reported everything. They promised to start an investigation immediately, telling me there was nothing more I could do. They said I was a victim of circumstance. It wasn't my fault my family was missing. Some consolation, that was. 2 days later, I returned home without my family. I didn't want to leave, but the police insisted it would help their investigation if I stayed out of it. It felt like a load of crap. Nobody seemed to be doing anything. The house felt emptier than ever. The only thing keeping me going was a sliver of hope. I hoped my family was safe. I hoped she hadn't hurt them. They didn't deserve this. I couldn't shake the feeling that my rudeness had pushed her over the edge. Whether I wanted to know the truth was another matter. I wasn't sure I could live with myself if I had been the trigger. The next day, my questions were answered. The chief of police called, and I drove back to Brookfield immediately. His tone told me something terrible had happened. I just prayed it wasn't death. At the station, 2 officers led me to an interrogation room. They weren't questioning me. They just wanted privacy and didn't have another room. The chief joined us, skipping formalities. The writing on the bathroom mirror wasn't blood. It was my wife's lipstick. The numbers were coordinates that led the police to a small clearing in the woods outside of town. There, they found a decaying, skinned body in a field. It was my beautiful wife. She'd been dead since the day of the convention, probably since the morning right after I left for coffee. They couldn't find any trace of Ashley. She was like a phantom. No history, no family, no DNA evidence. Her socials were wiped clean, and the website now displayed a black screen. I had expected that. Someone that deranged wouldn't leave loose ends. So there it was. My wife was dead, my son missing, and Ashley was nowhere to be found. That wasn't even her real name, but it'll always be the name of the person who shattered my life. I went home and canceled all my roles. I was probably done with acting for good, and even if I wasn't, I needed a long break. Social media had already picked up the story, so I knew the vultures were circling. I was done. That night, I nearly drank myself to death. I wish I had. Now, I'm holed up in a motel room 2 states away, writing this because of what happened earlier tonight. While making some terrible boxed mac and cheese, I got that gut feeling again. The same one that had led me to check the website. It was still a black screen. A relief, honestly. But then I noticed something. In the bottom right corner, in extremely dark gray text, was the word "here." How did the police miss this? Dreading what I'd find, I clicked on it. The same damn homepage loaded, just with a new URL. Only one new message had been sent, a repeat of an earlier one. Members, check the sightings page. I clicked the link. 3 new pictures were there. The first was of Ashley, sitting next to my bound and gagged wife. The look in my wife's eyes made me want to break down. The second was of my wife's body in the field. Only Ashley's eye was visible in the corner of the frame. The third picture had a caption. This was the reason I'm in this motel right now. It showed a dark room with a table in the center. A nice silk tablecloth, a breadbasket, and the room's only light source, a candle, were on the table. Sitting in the chair at the opposite end was what looked like my wife, but I knew better. It wasn't her. It was just her skin on someone else's body. The caption read, "I'm finally as pretty as her." I didn't have time to cry or panic. I shut the computer off, grabbed a backpack, stuffed some clothes in it, and fled. I drove until I was about to fall asleep at the wheel, then pulled into this motel parking lot. I checked the page again 5 minutes ago. There was one new picture on the sightings page. She found my house, the one I fled hours ago. She can't be far behind.